Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my spoiler-free review for Wonder Woman. Here's a random poster for whatever that comic is that I've never read before. Of course, with this being my spoiler-free review, I will be doing a spoiler discussion afterwards. I'll put a link in the description for that if you guys want to check it out. Obviously, this being my spoiler-free thing, keeping it super vague, I try to avoid anything at all that would give any sort of element away about this film. Outside, of course, this is how I felt, and this person was cool. So getting right into it, it's a good movie. Everyone's been saying it's a good movie. I was excited to see it. Like, finally, we're going to get a DC movie that's just good. Not like this part of it was good, or I totally hated this, because that's definitely what happened with Batman v Superman, for me at least. I hated that movie. But it's like this, across the board, I enjoyed it. It's not what I expected it to be going into it, because it is a comic book movie, but it's definitely, personally speaking, I would say this is closer in the vein to Logan than other comic book movies, because it's definitely a character-driven thing. It's not like, check out this character you've known for decades and doing this cool thing and that cool thing. It's like, this is the story of Wonder Woman, not really Diana Prince, but Diana, Princess of Themyscira. And it was great. It starts off, you see it in the trailers, we get some stuff of her young, and it kind of just goes from there. Of course, it's World War I, and it's really good. That's honestly like, that's one of the things that changes up what I thought about this film, because going into it, I was like, okay, how's this going to play out? And it's definitely an emotional movie, and the stuff that they do with it being set during a time of, war, is very intense. It's very serious in certain scenes. Like, it gets emotional. They show the elements of war where it's like, there are parts where they show people where it's like, these are people coming back from war, and not everybody comes back just like prim and proper, in their, outfits. And it's like, sweet, we're done. It's like people come back wounded and not being able to move. And it's like they have multiple scenes like that. And it's really well done. And then, you have that in general, which is just shown off really well. Plus you have Diana, who's going from this life she's always known into, basically our world during this time. And it's totally different. And that brings in some good emotional elements. And it brings in some good comedy too, because of course she's a fish out of water. So some of this stuff is really good because it's just comedic, like, she doesn't understand this concept, or she gets this concept but not in the way that we get it. So it's, the conversations are really well done. And then the same is with the emotional elements, where she's kind of driven. She's almost like, this is what I'm here to do, and that's what I want to do. And she sees this crap happen. It's like, crap, that's just depressing to see. So I like the way, they kind of play with that character, where she's very tough and she's driven to do certain things, but when she sees the things that she can't stop, or it's already happened and, she can't go back in time to stop it, it affects her. And it's like, man, whole movie they do that, and it, pops up here and there. And it's like, that's really well done, especially for a character that's, grown up in basically, a time of peace all the way through until she gets basically, into this film. So I really like the way that it played out in that regard. The action was definitely good. They have, I'd say they're like 4 solid action set pieces. There's actually a lot more drama than I was expecting, with it being just an action movie, but it's really well done. It's still paced out very well. If it's not, a big action set piece, then, you get some comedy here and there, and they're just going from, point A to point B. You have, moments here and there where it's like, all right, it makes sense that this would happen during this fight, or that would happen. And it's just really well done. Like, I really love all the characters. I think do great jobs. The supporting cast is really good. And you get you get to hear stuff about these characters, like kind of just real world stuff, like what they do with the war. They do for individual characters as well. It's like some real deep stuff. Some of the moments they introduce with some of the side characters, I'm like, man, that's some deep stuff to just kind of start talking about. So I like the way they did that for sure. The interaction with all the characters, but specifically, our main 2 characters with, of course, Wonder Woman and Steve, definitely well done. I love the way that they did those 2 characters, and how their relationship builds up from this, the first man that she's ever seen to, her partner in this crazy battle that they're going through. So it's incredibly well done. I like how they do, like I said, the action set pieces. It's not, monster here, monster there. It's like they're fighting actual people, so that's pretty cool. Of course, the slow motion is in there. I think it was used fairly well, outside of, like, the ending was the only part where I thought there was a little bit too much slow motion. And there's one sequence, like, it actually shows up right before one of the best parts of the movie, which is the scene in the trailer where she's going across the battlefield and they're like, trying to light her up, and she has the shield. There's a slow motion sequence that's right before that. And I was like, that should not have been there in any way, shape, or form, because it's literally, I thought it was going into the next scene, but someone says something, it goes into slow motion, and then Diana responds to what that person said, and I was like, I already forgot what they were saying, because when she says it, I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was going to be like, she responded to that, because she decided they put it into slow motion where she's changing something, and then she responds to them, and I'm like, why did they put that in slow motion? That seems so weird, and especially the scene itself didn't need to be slow motion. It was a very minute thing that she did, and they put it into slow motion. I was like, that didn't need to be there in any way, shape, or form. And they made it weirder because she actually does that and then responds. Like when you see it, it's just jarring. It's like, okay, you can have something, you have a conversation, it ends, then you go into the slow motion piece, and then, you know, a battle or whatever you want to do. But you don't have a conversation and then do slow motion and then have literally the end of the conversation after the slow motion. I was like, that didn't make sense. They shouldn't have done that. But other than that, I think the slow motion is fine. It's just like, you know, the very end, it may have been used like a little bit too much. And like I said, the action was really good. For the most part, it's people fighting people. And then, you know, the powers really come into play is, you know, it's the ending of a comic book movie. So they do kind of start to hype it up where it's like, here she is using like really crazy stuff, or, you know, just more moves and things like that. Or it's just more people, so she has to be like even crazier. It's not like, oh, here's 3 people, so I can just punch and kick and like throw my shield. It's like, here's like 12 people, so I gotta like, you know, do like superhero type stuff. It's not like just, I'm super strong, I'll just slap this dude backwards or something. It's like, I gotta launch from here to there, and, you know, it's CG. So it doesn't look, you know, really horrible, but it stands out because you don't really see that outside of her, like, you know, moving a little bit. It doesn't, you don't really notice too much of the CG outside of course, the, you know, the lasso of truth is obviously not like a bright glowing lasso. But other than that, it all looks really good, and it's, you know, like I said, punches and kicks, and she uses her super strength, and it's just really fun to watch as she uses, you know, different types of combat, sword, shield, lasso with hands and feet. So lots of different ways of combat throughout the entire film. So I certainly love that. We even get to see her, you know, training. Of course, that's in the trailers as well, when she's training when she's younger, and that's really cool. We get to see her grow up and watch, you know, the other Amazons as they, you know, kind of train, and we get to see some of their training combat. So the way they do the story is definitely well done. Great way to, you know, officially, I guess, introduce this character, you know, to the live action universe, or reintroduce her as far as like, you know, movies. But it was really well done. I'm very excited to see where they go. Honestly, with like her next solo movie, I know we're getting, you know, Justice League, of course, with everybody, but I really can't wait to see where they go next with her character. Like, I'm very excited to see what they do. Of course, with this being, you know, set in the past, it's so disconnected from everything else. It's like, all right, well, that was super awesome. Now, how do they, you know, make this awesome character tie in, and how do they change her character? Because of course, that was World War I. That was her first experience ever coming into the, you know, kind of our world. And it's like, all right, that's a very awesome version of that character, but she's going to be insanely different when we get to Justice League, because it's been so long since then. You know, how is their character different? So I'm excited to see how they play that, but very well done. You know, very well acted across the board. Action was good. The villains, I thought, were pretty interesting. They didn't do too much with the villains. Personally, I was like, okay, we got our villains in there, but I felt like not much really happened for them. They're in the movie, and they have some cool moments, but I was like, not too much is really done with the villains until like the very end, because it's like the end of the movie, we have to beat the villains. And they have some cool stuff for sure, but it was like, you know, they have moments here and they have a moment there. And other than that, they're just villains who are going through, you know, they're kind of going through the motions, and it's like, I don't really care. Let's go back to the heroes. And they kind of pace it out fairly well, so it's not annoying or anything where it's like, it's focusing so much on these villains and I don't care. It's like, you have a cool scene, it's like, okay, that's done. But when you get to the end, you're like, they just had a couple of little scenes, and it's like, scenes were cool, but they didn't really do anything super duper epic with the villains. It was just like, okay. And then once they got to the interactions between the heroes and villains, it got really cool, you know, at that point. But it was like, for the villains themselves, it was just like, okay. But there is a really great scene with one of the villains when they first show up, and it was the way it was done was almost creepy, and I really love the way that they did that scene. I can't, you know, get into any details about it, but the dialogue that they use and the way it's just like, you know, it was one of those moments where you have these villains where it's just like, okay, cool villains, they have some minor cool moments, or they do something cool because they're the bad guys, and then at the end it's like you get the dialogue moment from the villain, and they do some stuff where it's like, that's some really good dialogue. They do that for the heroes as well, but as the villain moment, they kind of filmed it in a really creepy way, and they had the villain dialogue going. It's like, I'm doing this because I'm bad, or whatever. But I was like, I like this scene. It was just kind of creepy, and it's a villain, and I was like, yeah, I like the dialogue that's happening here back and forth. So definitely a great film. Highly recommend you check it out. If you have, of course, would love to know what you guys thought about it. If you want to put spoilers, just put a spoiler tag, or you can save it for my spoiler discussion. But either way, comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about this movie, your least favorite parts about it. And of course, I want to know where you guys are hoping the series goes for Wonder Woman. What you guys want to see from her now, from Justice League, now that you've gotten, her solo experience, where she might be headed. What do you want to see for, her next solo outing? What villains you guys might want to see? Because there's a lot to do. There's a lot of characters there. There's a lot that they can do with it. And, we just see where they decide to take it. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think they did a great job here, bringing her back, into the fold. So that's really great, because she's definitely one of my favorites of all DC characters. Like, I like her. I like her more than Superman and Batman. Honestly, it's like, she's the only one who doesn't get like the super epic, like 100 million TV shows. Superman and Batman have 1 million apiece. So it's like, sadly, she just got like a couple of animated movies. Finally, we get to see her in action, and it was really well done. So, plus the costume looked great. It was actually, there was color. That was great. So, excuse me. You know how the DC movies like to be sometimes. But there was color. It was really nice. And the action was really great. So I'm excited to see how they do that in the future as well. But like I said, want to know what you guys thought about this movie. So please comment below. Let me know. And thanks for watching.